Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Florida Springs Council's webinar on responsible springs recreation. I'm Ryan Smart, and I'm pleased to be joined today by FSC Communications Specialist Chloe Doherty. You can watch these webinars live on Facebook or YouTube, and they will be recordings will be available immediately after we wrap up on the same platforms. If you want to ask questions, you can ask those questions directly through the Facebook and YouTube comments. We will get them here on the webinar, and we will take all those questions with all of our amazing panelists at the end of the webinar. Before we get to our panelists, I want to turn it over to Chloe to give us the latest Springs news updates.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you for everyone joining us live on Facebook and YouTube. Just some Springs news updates, as Ryan mentioned. Our last webinar last month is on Springs BMAP updates, so the state's water quality restoration plans. And if you did not get to attend that live webinar, the recording is available to watch on YouTube and Facebook. We suggest you watch our webinar and then check out our new webpage, floridaspringscouncil.org/SpringsBMAPs, for our full analysis of the state's Springs BMAP updates. You can get a spring by spring update to check out the sources of pollution for your local or favorite spring. Check out whether or not the BMAP for your local spring is successful, and where we are at in meeting water quality goals. So that is some of our Springs news updates. In addition, we also have some exciting upcoming events. First, we will be at Wolf Branch Brewing Company on August 27th from 4 to 8 p.m. for a Sip for the Springs event. And that is in Mount Dora. So if you're local in Central Florida, definitely come out to get more information, talk to us about what you learned today. Also, we will be in DeLand in October, and check out our Facebook for all of our upcoming events. And an exciting news update is our October Springs Summit. We have a Spring Summit every 2 years. It is a free to attend event for Springs advocates and experts, and we are so excited to be holding it this year at Stetson Law School in Gulfport, Florida. We have a fun itinerary full of speakers and fun events for the Spring Summit. So I encourage you all to attend if you're able to, and registration opens August 19th. So definitely mark your calendar for when registration opens, and keep October 19th open so that you can come to the Spring Summit, learn more about Springs advocacy, responsible recreation, and more.
Thank you so much, Chloe. I hope everyone will come to the summit. For those of you who were at the previous one, you know what special it is, how much good work and advocacy and connections get made. And I think this one will be even better than the last. All right, getting to our main presenters. Our first presenter is Linda Wilinski. Linda is one of my favorite Florida wildlife photographers, and honestly, just one of my favorite people in the Springs advocacy world. She uses her remarkable gifts to educate and inspire and advocate for the benefit of Florida springs, rivers, and wildlife. I'm really excited for everyone to see this presentation about, how you can responsibly recreate from someone who, does it so well and shares her photography and gifts with the world. Please take it away, Linda.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the council for having me. I'm honored to kind of spread some awareness when it comes to conservation photography. What we all have in common is we love the springs, right? None of us is going to be like, oh, it's blue water and it's just refreshing and clear. Another thing that we have in common is we all can make a difference one way or another. And one of the things is to really let our pictures speak. The stories that need to be heard by people, to just kind of raise awareness for our springs. And what I'm more focusing on is the wildlife that calls the springs home. So one of the next, please. So one of the most contradicting statements I always make is conservation photography is sometimes not taking pictures at all. It sounds weird. But the explanation behind it is sometimes the wildlife just simply isn't in the mood. And by us chasing after the shot that we really want to get, we really disturb the wildlife more than we need to. So I've missed a lot of photo opportunities because I just felt like it was not the right time to take a picture. Next. So when we're out there, so this raccoon was very skittish, right? It didn't know whether I was going to eat him, whether I was going to hurt him. Um, but after I kind of stopped and kind of slowed down, it will show in the next slide what happened. So the first thing that we want to ask ourselves when we're out there and we're seeing incredible amount of wildlife, does the animal feel threatened by us? Does it feel safe? Is it trying to forage? Does it have offspring? So our goal really, as photographers, should be to make the wildlife safe. Wildlife photography without putting the wildlife as priority really goes against everything in photography. Next. So this is what happened after I stopped paddling and I just hovered in the current, and this raccoon actually, figured out, oh, she's not gonna hurt me, and I can somehow trust her, and it came out of its hiding. So this is what happens with ethical photography. When we put the wildlife first, it will start to establish some type of a connection where we're no longer the intruder and they're kind of accepting of us. And the biggest accomplishment aren't prizes. I mean, I know prizes are really, really super cool. But the biggest accomplishment for photography really is the wildlife trusting us. Next. Offspring is a very critical time for animals. Again, put yourself in the animal's shoes. So they're sleep deprived, right? Because they have to feed those little spoonbills. They're trying to protect them from predators. They're trying to feed themselves. So if a lot of people flock to this location, it's gonna disturb them, right? In some type of way. So my advice is always to share pictures later, especially with babies. I've learned that over the years that sometimes that you get just so excited that you see this baby, bird or otter or whatever it is, and you want to just share your joy with everybody. But sometimes that's not the best thing, especially on social media, because it might attract too many people for that very fragile situation. Next. So I wanted to just explain the perfect approach of photographing wildlife. Again, this is just advice. I'm not telling anybody how to take pictures, but this is just from experience. So there's 3 steps. There's caution from the wildlife, there's curiosity, and then there's comfort. Next. The first one is caution. So the wildlife, kind of like the raccoon, evaluates the danger. This is when I just completely ignore the wildlife. Like I act like I don't even know that they're there. I point my camera in the different direction. I paddle the opposite direction. So I will do anything to make that animal think they're not targeted in any way. Next. So once I do that for a little bit, they become curious because now they're no longer threatened or feeling, looked at. So that's when they become more curious. They move around more freely, they, continue with their grooming, but every now and then they look back and say, are you still there? Are you still, not trying to kill me or anything? And finally, after that step comes comfort. Next. Comfort is when the animal starts to ignore us as photographers. So that is really when the magic happens. This is where you can really document true animal behavior. The animal is at peace. It's got really, it's just, it's free. Sorry, my dog feeder is going off. It's just at peace with it, and it's no longer threatened, and it will show you the true behavior that animals have. Um, I also wanted to note that sometimes that does not happen. Sometimes the first stage is the one where it stops, where the animal is there, but it's kind of skittish. And rather than, getting more comfortable, it just moves on. That happens a lot. But so these 3 steps, when they do happen, it makes it even more special. Next. So our cameras and our phones, I mean, you do not have to be a professional photographer to really tell stories and to dive into conservation photography. Um, we're here to share the good and the bad. The reason is because the good provides hope and the bad raises awareness. Both of them are necessary. For example, I have a picture of Manatee Springs, beautiful emerald water on the surface. However, when we dive into the water, it's filled with algae. Not so pretty, but people, they react, and we want emotion. We want to bring out emotion in people because that is where they start to act. Next. So another contradicting statement that I usually say is caring is sometimes not sharing. So that means location. Location is a big thing. There's a really fine line. I brought the bog as an example. So if I walk through there, right, there is some damage. I'm not going to say that it's not without any type of consequences, but it will pretty much be minimal. So then I come home and tell Johnny about it. And Johnny is a great photographer and he's been dying to get to the bog up there. So I tell Johnny where it is. And Johnny has a couple more photographers that also want to take pictures of it. So my point is, if 5 people walk through that very sensitive area, it's probably able to recover. But if there are 50 or 500 people walking through there, it's no longer suitable for the bog and it will get trampled. So always keep that in mind. I know a lot of people get a lot of hate for, not disclosing locations. I am a big advocate in doing the right thing and not really caring about whether someone likes that or not, because as a conservation photographer, our priority is really preserve the wilderness. Next. So the more I dove into conservation photography, I realized my own impact as well. I cannot say just because I'm a conservation photographer, I do not have an impact on anything negatively. So over the last winter, I decided to leave my wetsuit in the closet for the entire winter and try to photograph manatees from my kayak. It was not an easy task because that underwater housing is pretty heavy, and I came home with a lot of backache, but it was well worth it because I think the picture speaks for itself. The manatees were really comfortable with me being there and not being in the water. So I'm not saying do not ever swim with manatees. I'm just saying maybe we want to minimize swimming with the manatees, or being exposed to any type of wildlife that we photograph on a regular basis. Maybe we just want to go for a hike instead, or look for alternatives rather than always going to the location and always photographing things. Next. So this pretty much sums it up. The true art of photography is not disturbing natural behavior. Have confidence in your skills, but take pride in your ethics. Next. And here's my contact information. So we are at the end of my presentation. Chloe show us a little video that I put together over Memorial Day weekend, just to kind of try to show people about the destruction that happens on the rainbow. It's gotten a lot of attention, which really surprised me because I thought everybody was aware how bad it gets. And most of it, all of the video footage was taken with my phone. It was put together with the phone. So that is just an example of how everyone really can do something out there in the community through social media. Put a little clip together, reel together, and just have your story heard. You are making an impact whether you see it or not.
Thank you so much, Linda, for that wonderful presentation. We are
No
going to
problem.
have Linda back a little bit later for Q&A.
Thank you.
All right, our next presenter is Taylor Masnjak. Taylor is an owner and guide at Get Up and Go Weeki Wachee, as well as several other Get Up and Go locations. For anyone who doesn't know Get Up and Go kayaking, they offer wonderful, clear kayak experiences in many of Florida's most beautiful springs, rivers, and estuaries. I think I've done 6 of them now. So I, can speak firsthand, not just to the quality of the kayaks and the rivers, but they have wonderful, wonderful guides every time I go out. And they do a lot to support FSC's advocacy to protect the springs. So I really appreciate that. So very happy to have Taylor on today to talk about her experiences as a business owner and guide to our springs. Take it away, Taylor.
Awesome. Ryan, thank you for the warm welcome. I'm so excited to be here. So let's just jump right into it and skip into my first slide. So who currently has been a guide or is acting as a guide? I want you to raise your hand and keep it up. I see a good amount of you, which is super awesome. Now I want you to keep your hand up, but I also want you to raise your hand if you've ever taken a family member or a friend with you on an adventure in Florida, and maybe you've excitedly pointed out a pelican or you shared that absolutely outrageous manatee fact that blows your mind. And I'm looking around and I can see that just about everyone has raised their hand, which is what I was hoping for, because that means you've acted as a guide. And you've done this maybe because you love the springs or you love the wildlife or you just love being outside in Florida and you want to share it. Maybe if you're like me, you think about what Florida will look like in 50 years if we meet all the stark predictions you've heard about, from population growth to land development, water usage. You think about the impact humans are having. When we as individuals or organizations or businesses take people out into wild Florida, every one of us, every time, we're acting as a guide, and we have the capacity to impact and shape the future of Florida if we recreate with conservation in mind. This happens to be something that I'm incredibly passionate about, so I'm beyond honored to spend the next 10 to 12 minutes sharing how we can all be guides that recreate with conservation in mind, and why you'd even want to be a guide that recreates with conservation in mind. Next slide, please. Awesome. So a little bit about me, like Ryan said, my name is Taylor Masnjak, and I am the owner of Get Up and Go Kayaking Weeki Wachee, but I also own a couple other of clear kayak eco tours across the state. I'm also an advanced Florida master naturalist. I'm a certified interpretive guide through the National Association of Interpreters, not the sign language type, the storytelling type. And then I'm also a guardian guide with the Save the Manatee Club. I also volunteer for several programs through UFIFIS and Save the Manatee, including manatee awareness through education. So let's go ahead and flip on to the next screen. Awesome. So if you're not familiar with the Weeki Wachee River, you should be. Just kidding, but here it is on the screen. It's probably one of Florida's most well-known spring-fed rivers, and it's probably one of the most used springs for recreation. And that's because of its proximity to Tampa and its proximity to Orlando. It's also very beginner-friendly because it's shallow and it has these beckoning blue waters. Because of this popularity, the river has been showing signs for many years now that the system was not operating as it should be, and that was due to human usage. You heard Linda say, and we heard it in the news a lot, it's being loved to death. Next slide. So an impact study was commissioned by Hernando County and Southwest Florida Water Management District to determine what could be done to balance the human usage and still preserve the ecological integrity of the Weeki Wachee River. The study focused on what behavior changes individuals could make when they come to recreate on the Weeki Wachee River. This way, everyone could continue to use and appreciate our beautiful resource. The key takeaways from the study were it's not the number of vessels causing harm, but the behavior of the humans on those vessels and what they do along the river. For example, the study documented that it only takes 30 passes through an area of vegetation for it to look like the picture in the top right corner of the screen. And that sets off a series of ecological events that are hard to reverse, and the impact is easy to see in these other pictures or Linda's video. It was because of this impact study that we made the choice as an eco tour company to prohibit these behaviors on our tours, and we operate the only no exit eco tour on the Weeki Wachee River. Soon after we opened our doors, the county, with support from the community, implemented a springs protection zone, and this prohibits vessels, which includes kayaks and paddleboards, from anchoring, mooring, beaching, or grounding their vessel within the zone. This in turn limits the activities that most often lead to the degradation on the river. Next slide. So this is a social media campaign that's being done by 4Ocean. If you're not familiar with 4Ocean, they're a company that takes ghost nets, which are abandoned fishing nets, out of our oceans. They also clean up plastic pollution and trash, and they repurpose everything that they pull out. And I thought this image was really powerful because you can see it's a sea of floating plastic trash, and each piece of trash is holding a sign that says it's not just one bottle. And that's because it's not just one plastic bottle. If every single person brings a plastic bottle, it's not just one. If every single person drags their kayak up on shore, it's not just one kayak. If every single person chases down a manatee to rub their belly, it's not just one person. So let's look at it this way. If 30 people are recreating on the Weeki Wachee River and they all pull their vessels up on shore and they all hop out and they trample vegetation, they climb trees, they swing from rope swings, and they don't practice passive observation, they chase wildlife, they harass them, it's going to do a lot more damage to the river and the wildlife than if 100 people come to visit and those 100 people practice passive observation. They stay in their kayaks, they don't exit out onto shore, they throw their trash away. Almost 141 million people visited Florida in 2023, according to Visit Florida. And 23.5 million people will call Florida home in this year, 2024. It's not just one person. If just 1% of the people who will call Florida home or visit this year recreate irresponsibly, it adds up to 1.6 million people. Yes, 1.6 million. I think we all know that my 1% was just a conservative estimate to make the math easy. So how can you use and grow what you already know to inspire others to recreate with conservation in mind? I'm going to tell you about 3 programs that will help you guide, whether it be professionally or just for your friends, like the future of Florida depends on it, because it really does. Next slide, please. So give me a thumbs up if you're familiar with Leave No Trace. I see a lot of head nodding, a lot of smiling, a lot of thumbs up, which is totally awesome. But did you know that Leave No Trace goes beyond so much more than just picking up your trash? It's a 7-principle framework to help you make choices when recreating that leave the smallest ecological footprint possible. And it's all developed through research. If you take one thing away from this whole presentation, I hope it's that you're pulling up a separate tab, you're typing in Leave No Trace, and you're signing up for the course, because it's absolutely free and it takes only about an hour to complete. And the reason you want to do this is because a single person trained in Leave No Trace, on average in their lifetime, will reach 256 people every single year and provide them with vital outdoor education. If you're acting as a guide, if you're taking people out into Florida in the most popular state to visit for vacation, this number could easily be in the thousands. So if that hour of learning about how to reduce your ecological footprint only inspires your quest for more Florida knowledge, then I've got another program for you that you have to check out, the Florida Master Naturalist program. Next slide, please. It's the science classes you always wanted to take when you were in school, but now you're an adult and it's something that you're actually interested in. So you're jumping on Mrs. Frizzle's Magic School Bus, you're buckling up, and you're heading out on an adventure into wild Florida, where you get a chance to go on an amazing field trip with experts. These courses are offered through the UF IFIX Extension Office across Florida, and there's 11 total classes that can be completed, and as you complete them, you receive a designation. You also have an opportunity to hear from and meet the scientists and experts working hard to share and conserve wild Florida. The Florida Master Naturalist courses are a valuable way for you to connect with your community. You can participate in local conservation efforts, and you learn about amazing organizations and the work they are doing for Florida, like Florida Sea Grant, the Florida Springs Council, and Save the Manatee Club. You also have an opportunity to develop your storytelling skills and master techniques that help you engage listeners. You write better blogs, maybe even develop content for your social media that focuses on conservation. All of these are always valuable skills, even if you're just trying to encourage your friends to ditch the fertilizer, not harass manatees, or just inspire them to become as deeply invested in their life list on the Merlin Bird ID app as you are. Because if you know, you know, right? Next slide, please. There we go. So how many of you are familiar with Save the Manatee Club? I see a lot of head nodding out here too, which is awesome. I thought this would be one where just about everybody is familiar with the work that they do. SMC has also created the Guardian Guides program, which is a voluntary recognition and education program that's offered to ecotourism providers in Florida, and it promotes the stewardship of manatees and their aquatic ecosystem. Manatee viewing tours can be a very powerful platform for education, appreciation, and conservation if it's done right. I cannot say enough great things about this program. It empowers you as a guide to know your manatee manners, facts, and conservation. You feel confident in the ecotour experience you're providing to your guests. And as an owner of an ecotour company, I know my guides are sharing high quality, informal wildlife education on every tour that models for others how to responsibly recreate with manatees. That way we all know we're out here sharing the same valuable sea cow know-how. Next slide, please. So why do you as an individual or an organization want to take the time to take the Leave No Trace course, become a Florida Master Naturalist or a Guardian Guide, and share stories that inspire others to conserve wild Florida? Because the proof is in the pudding, as they say. Let me read one of these reviews to you. This was such a wonderful tour. We love Weeki Wachee and getting to visit the wildlife. Our tour guide, Cassie, was super informative, even when I was asking about why people were swimming near the manatees. Travelers, please leave the wildlife alone. I highly recommend a tour where you can view their beauty properly around them without disturbing them. So that was just from one tour. This person who's gone out with us on tour learned so much from her guide that she's already impacted others, and we know that she's ready and empowered to head out and share with others every time she hits the springs. And that's because when you tell stories about ecosystems, when you share your love of the outdoors, it inspires everyone. For everyone here, from guides to tour operators to business owners to even just an individual hitting the water every weekend, the key takeaway is to put sustainable, ethical practices that reduce your footprint at the core of your recreation strategy. And this isn't not just about preventing harm. It's about actively participating in the regeneration of Florida. This means investing in conservation efforts, supporting sustainable ecotourism practices, and planting a deep connection between people and wild Florida. Next slide, please. So I want to leave you here with one of my favorite quotes. It's one that we see a lot in our Florida Master Naturalist course, and I think it really resonates with me because we often don't know what we don't know, and we especially don't know what we don't know about recreation. In the end, we will conserve only what we love, we will love only what we understand, and we will only understand what we are taught. And this was said by a Sanglinese forest engineer and conservationist. So what I take from this is that we have to go out there and use our role as a guide, whether it be informal or formally, to take every chance we get to teach people about wild Florida. Because what better way to give back to something that you love than teaching others how to love it too? So go out, learn everything you can about Florida so you can recreate with conservation in mind, like the future of Florida depends on it, because it really does. And that's the end.
Thank you so much, Taylor. That was great. We'll also be bringing you back in a few minutes for Q&A. Our final presenter this evening is Bill Weinaug. Bill is the owner of Wekiva Island. I first visited Wekiva Island in 2014 with Governor Bob Graham and Seminole County Commissioner Lee Constantine. We were doing a public workshop on effective citizen advocacy. Looking for a location, and Wekiva Island, I think, heard about it from Lee and contacted us. And the past 9 years, I have been back countless times, often just to enjoy personally, but quite a few times for work too, because they continue to do a wonderful job supporting our springs. I believe Wekiva Island is just living proof that a thriving business can exist in harmony with our springs and rivers. And that's what I asked Bill to talk about today. So I'm really excited to hear this. Thank you for being here, Bill, and please take it away.
Thanks a lot. Hey, welcome everybody. So now I'm an engineer, so I kind of like, I was asked to talk about a couple of things, and those two things are: one, what are our business practices that help protect the springs? And two, how does Wekiva Island offer responsible recreation? So I am going to start with that first one. Got to go a couple slides here now. So we'll start with this one. So we a couple years ago, we said, we really wanted to create an ESG plan that would kind of be the foundation of the future and what we do from our business practices as an environmental company. First, we hired NASDAQ to help us with that ESG plan. First questions they ask us is, why do we exist, and what is our purpose? Next slide. we got to go back again, being an engineer and kind of somewhere in my career, understanding the importance of sustainability and also having the opportunity to travel a lot. I was able to take our family around the globe, see the 7 summits. We've been to the highest mountains, Everest, and we've been to scuba diving, the Great Barrier Reef. And I have to tell you, everywhere we've gone, we've seen the impact of man. We saw some incredible things that kind of would break our hearts. One of the biggest ones, next slide, please. One of the biggest ones was when we were down in Antarctica. We actually happened to be in the Larsen Sea, where one of the largest ice shelves to ever have collapse around us. And it was very much eye-opening. It made us understand that there is something going on this planet on a larger scale. So next slide. That's kind of what set our course at home. We were really worried about what we were leaving our children. We have 5 kids, and so at home we started composting, we started collecting rainwater, we started to try to do all these things. Now again, I'm an engineer, so we're talking techno geeko stuff, but that's what we did. And somewhere along the way we realized that wasn't enough. Next slide. So we were lucky enough to about 16 years ago to purchase the old Wekiwa Marina. Cool thing. Big long history since the early '60s. The marina was pretty dilapidated, but we thought, what a better place to showcase an environmental business, a responsible environmental business. Next slide. So we founded 16 years ago the island. We wanted it to be a gathering spot, a place where the community can come together. We knew what was happening in the springs and on the river was not necessarily happening. It wasn't all happening on the shores of the springs. It was happening in what we called the spring shed. We understood the spring shed had a huge connection, and the only way we get the folks that lived in the spring shed there to understand the damage they were doing to the springs at their homes many, many, many miles away was to educate them. Now, these folks are not environmental folks. Environmental folks that might go to an environmental center to try to learn something, they already got it. They already understand. These folks are just regular folks that don't understand that there's something huge happening under their feet. And so we founded this whole thing on fun. The draw is fun, and once we get there, we try to educate them, and we try to do that. We talk a lot about subliminal learning. They don't come there to be lectured to, but they're there, so we are trying to help them understand what's going on, and we do all this for the future generations. Next slide. So we were actually, founded. We call them our 3 pillars: sustainability, art, and learning. So the things that we do there have to do with sustainability, art, and learning. We're such an incredible venue. We're a window into an awesome place. You can sit on the edge of that shore and you are right there. We do have a carbon neutral goal, but we also obviously have to have a Save the Springs and the Wekiva River goal as well, because that's instrumental to us being there. That is actually our calling card. We have art woven into the island. We have annual art events, and we have a lot of really cool things that happen around art. And then obviously, again, there's that word subliminal learning. We have a LEED platinum classroom on site, a certified platinum classroom. So again, the geek engineer in me coming out. Next slide. So in addition, Wekiva Island trademarked this word zero. This word zero, it kind of plays on the Spanish zero, which is zero, zero, but it stands for conservation, efficiency, renewables, and offsets. So all the techno geek things that we do at the island actually come back to one of these calling cards, one of these 4 calling cards of sustainability. Next slide. And then The Wekiva River. The Wekiva River is, you know, we're on the shore. It's one of our national wild and scenic river systems. It's one of two in the state of Florida. It was named a wild and scenic river in 1988 for 5 outstanding values, something that we continue to try to uphold. Next slide. And part of our upholding that is our support to some nonprofits. Now, we are a for-profit, but we support many nonprofits, and one of those is Keep Seminole Beautiful. My wife actually, at some point in time, took over as director for Keep Seminole Beautiful, and part of what we do is we do river cleanups. We do river cleanups at the Wekiva Island once a month. The first year we were there 15, 16 years ago, we actually pulled about 5 tons of trash out of the river. That was a great effort. The beautiful thing is today it's a little bit difficult to find trash, though we do find some trash, but those cleanups continue. You could sign up for a river cleanup at keepseminolebeautiful.com. You come to the island on the day that we have them, and the canoes and the vessels are on us on Wekiva Island to help move the needle. So that's something we do. In addition, yearly, that picture on the right there, the Wekiva paint out, where Keep Seminole Beautiful invites 20 to 30 artists from around the country to come to the Wekiva Island and paint. And it's a fundraiser for not only Keep Seminole Beautiful, but fundraiser for Wekiva Wilderness Trust. Very, very proud of that. A lot of that art is shown in our gallery, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Next slide. So what do? We try to, again, this subliminal learning. It's like, for example, I'm going to share some slides and the presentations, week-long presentations we have at Wekiva Island during the paint out. Linda's art story is something that we believe in, is John Moran's art story and his Springs Eternal project. Next slide. This is something every year I bring back so everybody sees this. We go through the series of slides of then and now, which showed how incredibly beautiful our springs were in many, many years ago and what they look like now. And that contrast is eye-opening and actually moves the soul and helps people to get on board and say, we do have to do something. We don't want that to happen here. So this is something we share every single year at the paint out. Next slide. So going back to ESG. So, some of you might know what ESG is and some of you might not. Back about 25 years ago, turn of the century, environmental science and environmental, social, and corporate governance became a core part of best-in-class company strategies to move into the future. Today, environmental, social governance, ESG. Today, ESG reporting is becoming mandated by publicly traded companies. There's a formal process that these companies select goals and they track their behaviors. ESG helps, basically there to help investors understand what kind of companies they are going to invest in and help them, the investors, track the efforts that these companies are taking on in these three areas, E, S, and G. Wekiva Island it was a business founded in the environment, about the environment, and we asked ourselves, why should we not have an ESG plan? We're not a publicly traded company, but we wanted to be held to the highest standards. So we did engage NASDAQ, one of the best in the country, to do that. We had them help us build this ESG plan. Next slide. You can see there's lots of moving parts to this plan. Again, those 3 main focal points. But we are now tracking and doing what we're supposed to be doing to become a responsible company. We just re-engaged NASDAQ to help us now take this ESG plan. We've kind of had it in play for a couple of years now to take it public, and we're going to publish our plan and make it available on our website. So transparency being a big thing. Next slide. So, you know, that first question, our business practices and what we do, you know, we felt we wanted to be held to the highest standard out there. And this is the reason we put together this ESG plan. And so stay tuned for that and when it comes out. But now you know a little bit more about that. Now, next one. Now we're going to talk about recreation, and we just heard a lot about responsible recreation, and it was beautiful. Thank you, folks, very, very much for that. At Wekiva Island, I'm going to clip through some things relatively quick, like for instance, our boardwalk. I think our boardwalk is the draw. Like I mentioned, we are a window into this incredible old Florida place, and so lots of folks come and sit on the boardwalk and just look at the beauty of the river and what's across the river from us. A good friend, Ryan mentioned Lee Constantine. A good friend often says, "You have to see it to save it." And again, this subliminal learning part of what we provide to our community is to get folks down there to see it, to fall in love with it, and know what they're doing at home has an impact on the river and help them make some cool changes. So the boardwalk, an important part. Next slide. We're going to hit through these. We have a food truck on site, 30 some items. We got an incredible outdoor venue on the edge of the river. It's a solar array that's part of that CERO renewables, the R in Zero. And this was designed around the forest through the trees. You see on the left are the trees, on the right is the forest. So, you know, sometimes we don't see the forest through the trees. And so when you look at this pavilion, you'll know what kind of inspired the idea. We have to start to see what we're doing to the planet. Next slide. Obviously, swimming right there at the island is a good family fun thing. Hit it. And then we also have volleyball there on site to have fun. Hit it. And there's the tooting otter. Now, the tooting otter, again, our favorite little animal mascot. You saw Weeki in one of the first slides we showed. He's our mascot, and we're going to be using him for some really cool new programs that's coming up. But the Tooting Otter is a craft beer and wine bar, and it's also a small little general store, which is kind of a cool place. But you could come and have some nice craft beers and some beautiful wines. Our wines are all keg wines, so we started out with wine bottles, but then we were throwing away so much glass. We couldn't find a recycler for the glass. We moved the kegs in. Voila, no more glass. Next slide. You know, part of our idea is to, again, it's the part of our idea is community and have community come down. So a few years ago, we actually worked with O-Town Composting, and we built a community compost center. We actually pay O-Town to come pick up community compost. So the idea is you come, you get one of those little composting buckets, you sit it on your counter, you do the thing at home, and once a week or so you come down, see your friends, sit on the edge of the river, put your compost into the community composting center, and have a beer and relax and be there in nature and get reset. And this is a cool program that we are hoping that it continues to grow. But composting, a good, important part of our future. Next slide. And then, of course, on Fridays and Saturday nights, we have music in the Tooting Otter. There's a schedule on our website. You can see, you could kind of go through who's playing and come on out. It's a lovely time on the edge of the river. Next slide. And then on Wednesday nights, I think this is once a month, we have open mic night where the community comes out and some people, they come and play and have fun together. Again, it's about community, bringing people together. Next slide. And I'll tell you my favorite time of year. This is when it's kind of, you know, in the summers, we do have lots of folks that come to the Wekiva Island, but in the winter, there's not a lot of folks that come out, and it is glorious. There's no bugs. It's beautiful out. We have a fire pit that lots of folks sit around and enjoy. sitting on the edge of the river and without getting bit up by bugs. Next slide. We do have Gallery Zero. Again, there's that Zero name on the up on the second floor, kind of over top of everything we've got. That the artwork, we have collected a lot of artwork of the river and of the animals on the river over the 16 years we've been throwing the Wekiva paint out and hosting the Wekiva paint out. So most of the year that artwork is there for our guests to come and view and enjoy, and if they want to purchase some of it, purchase it. But 4 times a year we'll have a show come in. One time of the year in March when we have the paint out, we let the paint, the art that was done at that year's paint out stay in the gallery, and it still is for sale for, again, those 2 nonprofits. Right now we have Linda, you probably know this one. The Wilderness Photography Foundation has a traveling exhibit called Nature's Generosity. It's a beautiful photography exhibit. It's up from we opened it up on June 8th, and it's going to be up to the August 25th. If you want to see more of that incredible photography of nature, swing by, grab a craft beer or a nice glass of wine, go upstairs and hang out and look at the beautiful art. And Linda, I do want to chat with you at some point in time and see if we could do a show of your work at the Gallery Zero at some point in time. Next slide. The Mike Barr Education Center and Learning Center. Now, this is the LEED Platinum classroom we talked about. This is the space that Ryan mentioned. They had meetings on it. Now we make this space, this is a LEED Platinum building. We make this space available to environmental nonprofits during the week, but you could also have your father's birthday party there if you want, or whatever it might be. So we're really proud of this building, and we're proud of the connection with Mike Barr. Mike Barr actually was the founder of Keep Seminole Beautiful, an incredible friend of ours, and an incredible friend of the planet. So we were proud to name our learning center after him. Next slide. Cool things that go on. Again, art. In that classroom, we once a month we have a wine and paint. So you come. It's a fun night out where we have a professional artist teaching us how to do whatever the subject might be that month. But check on the website and see the wine and paint is kind of fun, kind of painting the nature. It might be an animal, it might be a tree, it might be something out there on the river, it might be the river itself, but it's kind of a cool thing to do as well. Next slide. And then, of course, we have cabana rentals. These have become somewhat popular, but you get to hang out on the edge of the river and enjoy the river in one of these cabanas, and it's kind of a cool, fun thing to do for a small group. Next slide. And of course, we have our livery. We have canoes, kayaks, paddle boards, and the such. And we do try to educate folks before they go out, but this is all self-guided. We do work closely with Orlando Paddleboard. Orlando Paddleboard does operate tours out of our place, and if you want to connect with them and paddle the Wekiva River, it's definitely a beautiful show. Next slide. And then, of course, if you have your own vessels and boats, we do have launch, allow people to launch there with their own vessels. And part of that, next slide, is we've been a somewhat historically famous fishing place. So that is one of the recreations that we do on the river. I think that is the end. Yeah. And so I'll end with Weeki adopted one of the Lorax's sayings here. And so Weeki says, unless somebody like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It is not. So I think we've got to join the Lorax and Wiki and try to do better. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, President. All right, we're going to bring everybody back on and do some Q&A. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat on either Facebook or YouTube, and we will see them here. All right. They have a first. Here we go. So we had a question come in. What's the one tip you'd give visitors to springs to help protect the springs for future generations? So, you know, if you had to boil it down to your one thing to tell the average person going out to visit what Ichitucknee or Weeki or Wekiva, what would it be? And we'll start with Taylor.
It would be to stay in your kayak. The impact that you have from trampling when you exit, be it submerged aquatic vegetation or the vegetation on shore, it's so hard to replace that vegetation when it's gone. So you can contribute so much by just staying in your vessel.
Linda.
I would say do not harass wildlife. I'm just an animal person, and you know, I've seen too many things. You know, don't try to feed it. I know it's very tempting, especially with cute animals, but we're not really doing them a favor by feeding them or chasing them down. So just keep a respectful distance from them.
Do not harass wildlife is just a good life rule to live by.
Yeah.
If you don't want to get bit or end up in a situation you're not
Exactly.
prepared for. And Bill.
So I'm a little bit more spring shed focused. You know, obviously some of the focus, you know, some of the images you saw was all that algae that's in the river, and it breaks my heart. I tell you, 15 years ago, when we were on the river, it was this beautiful sea of eelgrass, and today it's that eelgrass is still there, but it is getting choked out by this horrific algae problem we've got, and that comes from nitrates, and that comes from 50% ish of that problem is coming from fertilizers that we put on our lawns everywhere in the spring shed. So my one tip would be, let's quit fertilizing, or let's fertilize responsibly.
Excellent answers by all of you. All right, do we have another question? All right, so we've got a few questions come about getting native eelgrass replanted on Weeki. So I actually want to throw this to Taylor in a sec, but just to give some background, you know, the eelgrass did not disappear because it wanted to go visit Ichitucknee. It disappeared because of excess nitrogen, because of over pumping, and because of irresponsible recreation. So you can't just go plant new eelgrass, because that eelgrass is just going to die. And planting that eelgrass costs millions and millions of dollars. So, you know, from a policy perspective, you know, what we really need to do is fix the problems that caused the eelgrass to leave. You know, I've been saying this probably 10 years, but you know, if the pipe under your kitchen sink busts, you got two options. You can turn off the water and call a plumber, or you can go buy mops. And you know, planting eelgrass or anything like that, we're just buying mops, right? We can do it all the time. We can keep mopping it up, but we're not ever going to get to the problem. You know, at some point you got to tighten your belt and call the plumber. But with that in mind, I think Weeki Wachee is doing some really, really good stuff right now. One of the things being the first major spring shed to get a springs protection zone in Florida. And one of the things that I found really inspiring was that the recreational guides who, you know, when we first started working on the springs protection zone, we're like, man, what are the guides going to say? What are the business owners and the kayak owners? And I was, you know, so pleasantly surprised to find that Taylor and every other guide and business owner I talked to down there, they wanted the springs protection zone. They welcomed it. They advocated it for it. They became the face of it. So Taylor, can you talk a little bit about that springs protection zone? You know, where that's at now? Are you seeing FWC out on the river educating people, stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good question too. And I thought that was such an awesome answer. The only thing that I would add to it is you can also go volunteer through our local UF IFAS extension office. That's really where these programs that are going to look at protecting seagrass or eelgrass on the Weeki Wachee, that's really where those programs are going to be housed, and where you're going to get the most return on your effort and investment is volunteering for those programs. So you can be there helping. Brittany Sharp is the one here in Hernando County. She's our seagrass and our UF-IFAS agent. She's got so many amazing plans and ideas for how we can tackle exactly that, replanting eelgrass on the Weeki Wachee. The Springs Protection Zone just started becoming implemented. Our signs went up, I think it's been like 6 weeks now, maybe 8 weeks. So it's been really cool to see the signs grow up. And then the last couple of weeks, FWC has definitely been out talking to people, trying to provide education. That, of course, is their first goal, because it doesn't do a lot of good to just write people tickets, especially if they're going to pay that ticket and come back out and do the same exact thing again next weekend. So having FWC out there sharing, having our local law enforcement officers, our local LEOs that are out there on the river trying to provide education, trying to share best practices are really what's going to, I think, continue to move along that Springs Protection Zone.
Thanks, Taylor. And Linda, I know you do a lot of stuff on the Ichetucknee. Folks along the Ichetucknee are also, they don't have a Springs Protection Zone, but I know a lot of folks around there would like one because of the impacts of, boats on that river. Have you seen any of those impacts? Do you have any experiences with that on the Itch?
On the Ichetucknee, the confluence where it meets the Santa Fe is horrific. In the summer, especially with everybody, I mean, tons and tons of boats. I think of the manatees and anything trying to escape the boats, and there's just, it needs to be, it needs to be done just like the Rainbow River. All these immaculate, beautiful places are getting destroyed. We have so many impacts on the river: the overpumping, the fertilizing, the nitrogen. If we just change one thing, it might not, save it completely, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. And Springs Protection Zone is absolutely one of the priorities for Ichetucknee and Rainbow. We're working on it. We're trying to collect as many pictures as we can. Anyone can help by sending us pictures or taking pictures, sending it to FWC. We can all make a huge impact when we get together.
Absolutely. And Bill, I paddled from King's Landing to Wekiva Island a few months ago, and it was one of the better paddles that I've had in the state in quite a while. I think that system, while there is algae, the amount of eelgrass and the amount of gators and fish and turtles and is really special. So it's nice to know that maybe some of our springs are not at a point now where we have to worry about Springs Protection Zones, but we really need to keep it that way. Every time I go to Wekiva Island, I'm always impressed that despite, like Bill said, it's not your traditional environmentalists. People are drinking and they're hanging out. I've never seen anybody litter in the water. I don't see people acting a fool and getting off their paddle boards and ripping up the seagrass. You can really tell the good job that the education does at Wekiva Island to keep that system looking as good as it does. All right. We had another. So before I get to that one, I just want to follow up on a comment to that question from Dustin Davis. He says, well, that's well and good because Weeki Wachee River generates millions and millions of dollars. How about spending some on it? And I could not agree more. One of the big problems we have in this state is that poop flows north and money flows south. So we get all of the sewage, sludge, and everything else from South Florida gets shipped up into our spring sheds, while the legislature gives about $1 billion a year to South Florida compared to the $50 million a year we get to protect all 30 outstanding Florida springs. So, we need a lot of regulation, we need rules, we need everything, but none of that's going to make a difference if we can't convince our legislators to, increase that amount to bring Springs funding and Everglades funding into some kind of parity. Because we estimate that the need for Springs funding is about $10 billion. So at $50 million a year, none of us are going to see it. Our kids aren't going to see it. Our grandkids aren't going to see it. So we really have to do better. And we would appreciate any support we can get. Legislative session will be coming up next year. This is if there's one thing your legislator shouldn't be able to say no to, it's spending your money in your community to protect the springs that you love. So I think that's a really important issue. All right. Sorry about that. Bring up that next question. Can you please share some springs conservation groups that folks can support? Well, selfishly, I would recommend the Florida Springs Council as a totally unbiased observer. I think we do really great work. But if you're, in all reality, FSC was started as a resource to our local Springs groups. So, if you're looking for something to really volunteer and get involved in, I would say look where you live. If you're in Rainbow River Conservation, Friends of Wekiva River is a phenomenal group that's been around for decades, does incredible work down in the Wekiva Basin. We've got Itchtuckney Alliance, we've got our Santa Fe River, and you can find a list of all of those groups on the Florida Springs Council. So, if website, so if I really encourage you to reach out, if there's a specific thing that someone's looking for, you can always email FSC and we'll try to put you in the right direction, because we think we have good relationships with most of those groups. And if any of you guys would like to shout out a non-FSC Springs group, go for it.
You already mentioned, for the Wekiva, if you're in the Orlando area, the Friends of Wekiva, they're a very active group and they do a lot of good stuff. So I would definitely, if you're in Orlando, the Orlando area, I think that's a great one to jump on board with.
Yeah, Ryan, you already mentioned Rainbow River Conservation, which I'm partial to, of course, and Itchtuckney Alliance, absolutely.
And I would just add that through the Florida Master Naturalist courses, you will meet so many different people who volunteer for just about everything. There is a conservation group for every interest out there. So take a course, make some connections, and volunteer for one of the people that you meet in the classes, whatever floats your boat, whatever strikes your fancy.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to take one last question, and then we'll all let you get back to your evenings. How do we get regulating agencies to change how they spend money collected and to better educate? This is a hard one. I wish I knew the answer to this question. I mean, if I knew it well enough, I probably wouldn't have to have this job anymore, which, would be something I'd actually relish. It really comes down to citizen advocacy. We're never going to have, I was in a meeting today in Live Oak at the Suwannee River Water Management District, lobbying for better minimum flow and level rules to protect the Santa Fe and Itchtuckney rivers. Both of those rivers are suffering significant harm from overpumping. They have been for more than a decade, and our state agencies are 8 years behind on adopting rules that were required way back in 2016. And now the rules that they are proposing essentially say, hey, everyone can continue to pump as much as you want indefinitely into the future. The way we can change that is by coming together. If you're not an FSC member, we have a free informed membership. I think we're the only nonprofits that have that. We have a lot of fancy technical advocacy stuff that we pull out during legislative session and other times. We really need to get together, contact our legislators. I'm up in Tallahassee lobbying on this stuff all throughout session. There's a few groups that do this kind of work. Find one of them, support them. And then when you see those emails that come in that are really annoying, like take action now. If you get them from the Florida Springs Council, it's not just a way to capture your email address. We actually need you to go to that and click on it and take action now. Because when I go lobby, I have had senators look at me in the eye and say, you're winning because my phone won't stop ringing and I need to get business done. So if you'll stop the phone calls, you'll get my vote. Right? Or we've had senators from the dais say, I got 7,000 emails against this bill and 3 for it. I can't vote yes. They really do care. They might not care what I say or what any individual one of us say, but when enough of us come together, we can really, really make a difference. So, it's collective action, it's organizing, it's lawsuits, it's all those things. Find a group they think that aligns with your values, get involved and support them, because that's the way to get it done. All right. Any closing thoughts from our wonderful presenters?
Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, Ryan, thank you very much for all that you do. And to everybody that's listening in, do get involved and do exactly what Ryan just asked us to do. It's the only way we're going to be heard is to in numbers. Lots of people saying the same thing over and over and over again to the folks that are up in Tallahassee.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I couldn't agree more with what everyone else had to say. Really, it is about numbers, and then it's just about educating yourself, going out there and learning everything that you can about Florida so you can share it.
And I just want to end with, at FSC, we know a lot of people. So, getting webinar guests is not a hard thing. We picked these three because they are absolutely outstanding at what they do. And if you haven't visited Wekiva Island, you need to go. If you haven't done a Get Up and Go tour on the Weeki, you really need to do it. And you have to check out Linda's photography. And if Linda's somewhere speaking live near you, go check it out. Her pictures are just incredible. I own quite a few. And need to get more. Thank you all.
Hey, and Linda, before you sign, Linda, let's talk about you being at Gallery Zero and let's do a show.
I would love to.
Beautiful.
Would love to.
I love this community. So thank you all so much. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us. If you enjoyed this webinar, please share it. It'll be on YouTube and Facebook. So help us spread the word, get more people watching these webinars, get this great message about responsible recreation and business ownership out there. And we will see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Yay.